All right, next up, we've got Robbie Allen from Automated Insights, who's going to tell us about how machines have learned to write.
The clicker.
Stuff that we actually read. Yes, we do have a clicker. This is a high-end event. We have a clicker.
You. Hello, I'm Robbie, CEO and founder of Automated Insights. Super excited to be here today. For those that haven't heard of us, Automated Insights is a 35-person company based out of Durham, North Carolina, right in the backyard of SAS, actually. I bet we're probably the only company that's presented to Data-Driven NYC from North Carolina. Is that right? Anybody else? One last North Carolina thing. Raise your hand if you've ever been to North Carolina. All right, yeah. It's not some backwoods, Robbie. It's a nice place. All right, so quickly on my background. So I started Automated Insights. Actually, the precursor to Automated Insights was called Statsheet. Statsheet.com still exists today. Just real quickly, I had finished a couple master's degrees from MIT. I was getting tired with my day job. I worked at Cisco for 13 years. I was a distinguished engineer designing protocols for routers. And yes, that was as exciting as it sounds. But after 13 years of that, I was like, all right, I'm ready to do something else. I started a sports analytics consumer website out of the consumer internet mecca of Durham, North Carolina, mostly focused on trying to do cool things with sports statistics. I thought back in 2007, there wasn't a lot that the ESPNs of the world and CBS and NBC and all the others were doing. I thought I could do a lot more with visualizations, tables, graphs. If I could get access to that data, I could do some really cool stuff with it. My background is computer engineering, automation, doing interesting things with data, so I started down that path. Quickly I learned in order to do a large consumer internet presence, you have to raise a lot of money. That's not conducive with being in North Carolina where it's hard to raise money, although it's getting a lot easier now. So we decided after we'd started developing some technology around this notion of automating the writing process. So fundamentally when I decided to raise money for Statsheet and leave my day job at Cisco, I thought in order for me to really scale out Statsheet, I needed to be able to generate a lot of content. That's how sports media companies really operate. They have lots of writers that produce content, but I didn't want to do that the good old-fashioned way. I wanted to do it in an automated way. And so I thought for certain types of quantitative analysis, there should be ways to automate it. Should be ways to create algorithms and software that simulate the analysis and writing process. And so that eventually turned into Automated Insights. And again, now we're at about 35 people and doing really well. But before I get into all that, I wanted to kind of set the stage. Again, I have a background in data visualizations, and I'm going to spend most of this talk talking about why data visualizations suck. But before I get into that, I want to show you just a quick video of some important meeting situations that I think you all can relate with. Hopefully the sound works.
Mr. Smith, here are your test results, and we'll see you in 6 months.
Does this mean I'm okay, or doctor?
So, you're here for your performance review today. Luckily, I have it here for your pleasure.
Did I do okay, or?
I've called a data scientist in here to help us figure it out.
What?
This graph shows that your leadership quotient has plummeted by 42% this quarter.
What does that graph mean?
I don't have time for this right now. I've got 30 of these to do this afternoon.
Will you make me the happiest man alive?
Well, as you can see from the charts over here, I do have some concerns.
So it's silly to think people would communicate this way, but we do every single day with our most critical business information with the current state-of-the-art business intelligence solutions like SAS and all the others that are out there. We think that there's a better way to do that. And in fact, the problem's only getting worse. Even just a couple of years ago, lots of companies were trying to figure out how to start collecting and storing data. I think, big data and all its hype, we've actually come a long way. Most of the companies we talk to nowadays, large companies to small companies, are doing a much better job of collecting and storing data. The problem is they don't know what to do with it, right? They have the data, and oftentimes they'll come to us and say, so what can we do with it? There's not enough data scientists in the world. And in fact, I think that problem's only going to get worse. This is the type of thing that in the future we're only going to get more data. It's hard to envision a situation in which we say, you know what, I think we have enough data, let's just not collect anymore. In fact, it's going to be the opposite. We're going to keep collecting more and more data, and it's going to get harder and harder for people, humans, to be able to sift through that data and come up with compelling and interesting insights about the data. So I kind of stole a little bit of my thunder, but the process that we use today and what most data scientists and what most data savvy people use to communicate insights about data is through visualizations, dashboards, tables, graphs, charts. I mean, that's what, as a programmer, that's what you have available to you to be able to take a large amount of data and distill it down into something that's hopefully digestible to a large audience. The problem is, I think most visualizations are lacking. They're actually not great mechanisms to communicate insights at scale. And I'm going to go through a few of the reasons why I think that's the case. First are what I call the mental gymnastics of deciphering dashboards and visualizations. In order for somebody to understand even a basic visualization, you have to understand what the X and Y axis is, the scale, the units, the colors, their size. There's all sorts of variables that can go into a visualization. And that's assuming it was a well-designed visualization. So first, there's a problem. There's an assumption that the person trying to interpret the visualization really can understand what it's trying to tell them. Most people, as I learned from StatSheet, even though I'm a sports fanatic, I love sports data, I love to see interesting uses of sports data, it's actually a fairly small percentage of the overall population that really can understand hardcore sports statistics. And I think that's exactly the case in all forms of business. Even though a lot of us probably in this room think, well, yeah, I could put together this awesome visualization, most people don't really care about visualizations. They just want to know what the heck the data is telling them, as easy as they possibly can get it. The next thing that I've observed is something I call the baseline effect. So we've worked with several customers where their primary mode of, again, communicating insights about data is presenting some sort of largely stripped down dashboard, a couple of numbers, maybe a couple of charts, even simple charts. The problem is, maybe people are interested in that in the very beginning, after a month or two of constant, looking at the data, seeing it updated over a period of time. What happens is they start to establish a baseline. That is, they're not able to see small changes in the data over time related to that dashboard. It's kind of the boiling frog syndrome. Small changes aren't noticeable. They're imperceptible. And so over time, they just tune it out. And so eventually, most dashboards become useless because people are already used to seeing it. It's giving them the same information that they saw last month or last week, and so they stop looking at it. The other thing is, despite companies like Tableau and others that like to talk about how visualizations tell a story, they actually don't tell stories. Again, telling a story is something that I'm doing with you right now. I'm not putting up a bunch of visualizations and just letting you do the interpretation. Words are what tell stories, and that's exactly kind of what our pitch is when it comes to preferring narrative over visualization. This is an example from our Google Analytics product that takes Google Analytics data and distills it down into narratives that hopefully describe as simply as possible what the heck's going on with your website. A few landing pages could be better optimized to drive conversions. The following 4 pages brought in a large number of visits but had weaker than average conversion rates. Now we had our people go through and figure out, so if you were actually going to figure that out in Google Analytics, what would you have to do? And it's essentially 6 or 7 pages of selecting various options, and then you might be able to come up with that specific insight. And that's not a very complicated one. But again, that's another example of even simple insights you can describe that typically, if you're going to access it via traditional visualizations, require a lot of work. Kind of related to that is another point I've been thinking about lately, and it's what I call the data density of words. If you look at a visualizations, I would say they're not very dense from a data perspective. Again, most of the data is right in front of you. That's the whole point of a visualization, is to show you all the data points. With words, you can actually condense data into a single word. And in fact, in most of our implementations, those are the things that I like the most in terms of what we produce. You can take a bunch of data and turn it into a single word like strong. For example, maybe you're describing a sales quarter. It's a sales report going to all the sales agents in the field. And you can look through reams and reams of spreadsheets, dashboards, and you can condense all that into a single word, strong. Again, this is an oversimplified version, but it kind of describes the point I'm trying to make, and that's you can condense a lot of information in a simple sentence that would normally take lots and lots of visualizations, spreadsheets, datas, and table to be able to get that yourself. And in fact, I think in many cases, there's lots of insights you can't even communicate with the visualization. Again, there's certain types of trends, especially volatile data. multivariate analysis that you can't simply communicate with a visualization, or if you did, you'd have to use 10, 20 different visualizations and hope the person can come up with the same conclusion. Again, words don't have that problem. So fundamentally, narratives provide what we like to call actionable personalization. Personalization is another overhyped word these days, but in our words, what personalization means is the ability to take data and create a description that was written specifically for you about you and your data. And the great thing about it with words relative to visualizations and dashboards is you can actually make it actionable. If you're able to master the language and describe informationally what's going on in the data, then you can turn that around and also create algorithms that describe how you should fix the situation, improve the situation, etc. So real quickly, my company, Automated Insights, has created a platform called Wordsmith that actually does this very thing. Some of our clients include Samsung, Yahoo, even the Associated Press. We work with lots of media companies, large Fortune 500 companies, creating all sorts of reports, everything from fantasy football recaps, which I'll show in a minute, to sales reports, and all sorts of internal reporting and BI use cases. So real quickly, how does it work? This probably won't be satisfying for most of you. It's not as easy to boil down exactly what we do in one slide. But fundamentally, obviously, we have to start with data. Every word that is produced in our reports has to be driven off of a data source. And so we first start with data. The more data, the better. And it typically, again, because of the density of words, as I mentioned before, that means you need lots of data in order to produce even just a small amount of words. So we take data, and again, it can be everything from data that resides inside of your databases, real-time data, cloud-based data. We like to use as many data sources as we possibly can. And then we create algorithms that compute facts on the data. And so these facts, in some cases, are done in an automated manner, so we can go through and we have lots of statistical analysis that will just automatically try to find patterns and trends in data. But then we also have a team of data scientists that can program the system to look specifically for certain types of facts in data. Once we have this list of facts, then we have a language platform that knows how to take those facts for a specific implementation and describe those facts in plain English. And it doesn't have to be English, it actually can be any language. We've done English and German to date, but we can ultimately make this available in any language. Then the last part is a publishing platform. Again, we're an engineering company, and so we can go the whole mile of publication. We can take the ultimate content that we create and publish it in any CMS or social media. We automate over 500,000 tweets a year. And last year we created over 300 million personalized stories with our platform. The interesting thing, and most people don't believe it when I say it, but we generated more content than all the media companies combined last year. Again, 300 million. And you can't do that unless it's automated. The traditional economics of content creation wouldn't allow you to do that much unless it's automated. But yet this year we're expecting to do over 1 billion pieces of content with the platform. And so it really opens up the possibilities for what you can do in terms of personalization when you don't have to think about the traditional economics of content creation. All right, just a few examples of things we've done. I don't know how good these will come across. Again, one of our first big clients was Yahoo. We do tens of millions of pieces of content for them a year. They're the leading platform for fantasy football. How many fantasy football people in here? Not that many. So whenever you draft your team in fantasy football, we actually produce a report card, and we give you a grade on how well you drafted. And that's another example where we can actually boil all the picks you made down into a single grade. And that grade could be an A, or it could be all the way to a D or a D minus. People love this. Well, at least the people that got A's and B's. It turns out the people that got C's and D's, Yahoo heard pretty loudly from them. The funny thing is, Yahoo came back to us this year and said, you know what? We want to make it even snarkier, because sometimes we'd actually, we'd tell people that they made a bad move, or we'd, not necessarily, give them kudos for making bad moves. They said this year, just let them have it. And so this year, in the next month or so, we'll be launching the new version of these report cards that'll be even snarkier and humorous in tone. That'll be the first attempt to really go on the far end of snark when it comes to automated content. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction is. But again, our system is programmable from a sense of it could be a tone that's snarky, it could be a sort of real vanilla style. It can be a coaching tone. We can actually program the system to take any tone that's needed. Because we're in New York, I figured I'd throw up a finance example. We've done some personalized portfolio recaps. Again, to me, and again, not to offend any of the data scientists in the room, but I think in 5 to 10 years, the role, at least the role of data scientist or data engineer, will largely go away or mostly change, and it'll turn into programming systems like ours. And so I think the days of poring over spreadsheets and producing analysis about the data is going to go away, and ultimately what it'll enable, once data scientists are able to codify their knowledge in algorithms, is then we can produce personalized portfolio recaps that encapsulate all the knowledge within a financial services company and distribute it to every customer they have on even a weekly basis. Right now most financial services companies couldn't provide these type of personalized reports, but maybe on a quarterly basis if they're lucky. The future, which will be much more automated, will enable us to have that kind of touch on a much more frequent basis. We've done a lot in quantified self. Obviously, quantified self is very quantified. And so we can take that data, and again, to me, the quantified self is a great use case of the baseline effect. Most of the apps that you can get today, and I won't name the names, the primary thing that they're showing you is how many steps you took, how many calories, how much sleep, etc. And you see that week in and week out. After a couple months, I'm like, yeah, that felt like a 10,000 step day. Why do I need to keep looking at this or having this app tell me how many steps I took when I kind of have a good idea? I just establish a baseline over a period of several weeks. Narrative enables you to have a more volatile type of content that can provide insights on a much more frequent and regular basis that's different. And it won't necessarily cure the baseline effect, but it can extend it out significantly further. Sales reporting, again, I mentioned we've done this several times. Matt, I'll get to your question in just one second. Sales reporting is another one. We've done that for many companies. The last thing I wanted to mention is a product we just launched a couple months ago called Wordsmith for Marketing. I talked about it earlier. We take Google Analytics. We thought, what are some really dashboard-heavy applications? Is there a way that we could write some reporting around it? Google Analytics is used by millions of people. Most people don't like to have to spend their day inside of Google Analytics. And so we've created a tool called Wordsmith for Marketing that automates reports. It can be anywhere up to 6 to 10 pages that describe what's going on with your website traffic, social media, paid search, organic search, referrals, all of that, distill it down so that you don't have to go in and wrestle with Google Analytics. So last thing is, I'm happy to show you what our system can do with your data. Send me an email, Robbie@automatedinsights.com. We can take your data, happy to sign NDAs if necessary, and generate reports to show you the types of things that we can do with it. Last thing, we are hiring. Again, we're in Durham, North Carolina. Almost everybody raise your hand. You all like North Carolina. Come on down. We're hiring software engineers, data savvy people. We actually just moved into a space that overlooks the Durham Bulls stadium. It's a AAA affiliate for the Tampa Bay Rays. So we essentially have season passes to see the Durham Bulls, and my guys are really taking advantage of that. So that's just one of the many perks that we offer. But again, happy to speak to anybody after this. Thanks.
Thank you. So we basically have time for one question. Okay, you were in the back.
Hi, Dennis Clark from Luminoso. I wanted to learn a little more about your language generation platform. Are we really talking about something that's sort of grammar-based here, or something that's a little bit more statistical in terms of deciding whether we're going to say you had a strong quarter or a weak quarter?
Yeah, so it's all algorithmically based, and it's tweakable. So strong is implementation specific. What might be strong to one company for a quarter might be completely different. So there's a lot of analysis that's built in that will look at not only kind of what maybe the company thinks should be considered, but then also looking across the universe of all the data and actually automatically determining what should be strong or what could be considered strong versus weak or average.
All right, we'll do another quick one.
Eleanor Haas, the Calyx Soup. So, but you can only do this with statistical data, correct?
Yeah, so great question. Can we only do this with statistical data? Currently, we're mostly creating quantified analysis or data that's based on quantitative analysis. We don't do qualitative analysis yet. That is analysis based on the senses, experiences, things of that nature. I will say that's coming, though, in the future with the rise of sensors, collecting data on all aspects of weather and movement and tracking activities. I think in the future, even that will be in the purview of what we do. But right now, it's mostly we need hard data and to be able to generate the kind of content we create.
Great. Thanks so much, Robbie. And you're going to be around as well
Yep.
after. Terrific. Thank you.